Chapter 24 At the Gala. As the week drew closer to the biggest night of the year, the Grand Galloping Gala, Shining Armor got little sleep. He checked and rechecked the placement of guards, spells to detect weapons of non-royal guard issue, quick escape routes for the princesses if things should go awry, that kind of thing. The lack of sleep also made him quite irritable as royal guards who didn't want to be on duty during the gala found out. Comet resumed his normal routine of the day after Gorgon had fed on him, much to the relief of Angel and secretly Valerie. However, when pressed for information, Comet couldn't seem to recall what he had done for that day. Guarding Philomena was listless to the Pegasus and Griffin, but they accepted their duty without complaint. As for the energetic Bat Pony, she was ecstatic to learn that her favorite pony, Comet, would be joining the guard on the night of the gala, after Shining had posted a list of every guard on duty that night. Still, unknown to either of them, Comet slipped away at night, responding to the call of yet another princess. No pony seemed to notice this until Valerie spotted him one night after using the facilities. It took several seconds to register the pony was Comet, mostly because of the glowing eyes. Curious, Valerie stalked the stallion, avoiding any kind of contact or sight. The pursuit took her down to where she'd first met Comet, the armory, which should have been devoid of life at this time of night. Instead, though, it sounded as if the guards were having a party down there. She watched from the top of the staircase as Comet shambled over to the door and knocked. What greeted him both surprised and terrified Valerie to the point of almost making noise. A rather large pony, about the size of Princess Cadence, covered in a shiny black material with hideously large green eyes and an odd bluish-green mane, stuck her head out and grinned slyly at the stallion, who still remained stony.
"Ah, my favorite little toy,"
she cooed in a raspy voice.
"Where have you been? I've gotten quite hungry."
She reached out and wrapped her hole-ridden hooves around Comet and pulled him inside, the door slamming behind them. Valerie stood there, dumbstruck by what she just saw. Comet had another mare? One who he was just meeting behind both in Valerie and Angel's back. A large sensation of anger and hurt welled up inside Valerie, but she stifled it. There was no way Comet was a tail chaser. Was there? Sure, he did like Angel and had allowed Valerie herself to get somewhat physical with him, but he never seemed to notice any other pony or Griffin for that matter. That was when another idea hit her. His eyes were glowing the same color as that weird black pony's. So, did she have him under a spell? Feeling particularly brave, Valerie marched up to the armory door and pounded on it. Hello? She called as the noises fell silent. A sudden sense of intrepidation as voices rang out. "Go away," called the armorer. "I don't care if you didn't get an invite. No ponies allowed in my armory." "I know a stallion by the name of Comet is in there," Valerie shouted in return. "I want to talk to him, and I want to do it now." Silence ensued for a couple of seconds before the armorer shouted in reply. "Who's this?" Valerie took a deep breath and yelled, "His Griffin friend." Shuffling could be heard from inside the door as objects, ponies, moved around the door, and soon it creaked open to reveal the familiar orange coat of Comet, along with his normal red eyes, which were glaring at the Griffin. "Why are you here, Valerie?" he demanded. "What? Why are you here?" she retorted. "I'm here with my friends. Something you wouldn't understand." He rebounded with a trance of venom in his words. Valerie grimaced at the last part, but kept her composure. I know you have absolutely no friends outside of me and Angel," she quickly responded. "You've been making me and Angel worry about you, so you could come down here and pretend to have friends?" Comet gritted his teeth as he worked out the next few words. Why do you always have to force your way into my business? He blinked several times as he spoke, and quite a bit more before continuing. You show up out of nowhere, nearly raped me on the first day, force your way into my relationships, and don't understand when to quit. Is it some stupid griffin thing to force yourself upon me because you have no life outside of fighting and dying? To that, Valerie had no answer other than a small squeak of hurt. Tears began to form around her eyes. Well, at least I'm not a baby over my dead siblings. Comet's eyes widened before narrowing to deadly arcs. What did you just say? He asked, almost hissing at her. You heard me, Valerie almost shouted in return. I know you're still just a little full over your sister. Your sister has been dead for years. Comet's angry face now became one of pure, unadulterated rage as he bared his teeth at Valerie. Don't you dare speak of her like that again, you pathetic pile of feathers. You think your life is hard? Imagine never being able to leave your house, eating normal meal, or never having any friends. You screwed your own life up, Valerie. Don't try and mess mine up. I'm not a weak little pony who you can play sympathy with. I have my own life that doesn't revolve around you. Now get away from me. As that last word hung in the air, Valerie lost all sense of composure. She lowered her head and started crying. As she sobbed, Comet clicked his tongue to the roof of his mouth and said, Dear Celestia, you really don't know when to quit. Valerie's face whipped up, and a look of anger peeked through her tears. Shut up! She shouted at him. You miserable excuse for a stallion. To think I even liked you was stupid. Reacting instinctively, she reached up and swiped a claw across his face, leaving him yelping in pain as he covered his left cheek. He fell to the floor, writhing in pain, and when he reopened his eye, Valerie noticed it was glowing again. Ah! He shouted in pain. Valerie! Why? The griffin was about to say something hurtful when Comet wailed in pain again and clutched his forehead instead of his cheek. He tossed and turned on the ground, and his eye glowed brighter, and he mumbled, Stop telling me what to do. Suddenly, he stopped convulsing and stood up as if nothing had happened. He turned and glared several daggers at the griffin before walking back into the room. The door slammed shut before Valerie could enter, leaving her with a lot of unanswered questions. As the door started to open, Valerie darted away and bolts of green magic followed her. The griffin ran and flew at the same time, trying desperately to maximize her speed as bolt after bolt barely missed their target. One thing stuck in her mind as she ran back to the bunks. Comet was not himself. She felt incredibly sorrowful as she ran, hearing the words they exchanged in her mind. She should have known Comet wouldn't say such things to her, especially since she felt that he did like her. Her words were interrupted, though, by a royal guard who tried to swipe at her with his spear. Valerie just managed to duck it and dug her claws into the carpet, trying to slow down. She spun to face the guard, who was glaring angrily at her, before jumping with the spear pointed at her. Valerie nimbly dodged it by spinning to her left and swiped the guard with her claws. The golden armor gained several scratches, and only one swipe found a piece of flesh, but the guard didn't bleed. Instead, several long scratches stayed on his pelt as he swung the spear at her again. Valerie, her years of training in the Griffin Kingdom kicking in, ducked yet again and reached out with her left claw to grab the weapon. She felt the solid wood in her palm and closed around it, swiping at the guard's face with her right claw. She made her mark as 3 particularly long black tears appeared on the guard's face, one passing directly over his eye. Underneath the eye came a light blue glow, and a hiss came from its mouth. With the spear still in her claw, Valerie pulled it back to her, smashing the hilt on the back of the guard's helmet. His head recoiled forward, and Valerie grabbed his chest piece with her right claw. She tugged at it and began to flip over. His face collided with the floor and acted like a pivot point as he rolled over. Valerie wasted no time by flapping her wings to get higher than the guard and landed on top of him, bringing her claw back to his face while she successfully pulled the spear away. She pulled the hilt up right to her claw and brought it down. The guard had just enough time to reach up and block her from smashing it into his neck by holding it up. Valerie's angry gaze shifted down and met the eyes of the guard.
"What are you?"
she hissed through her clenched beak. The guard simply responded with a hissing noise and kicked the griffin off of himself. Valerie monopolized on this and made a hasty getaway as the guard pulled himself up. He hissed angrily and put a hoof over his eye. Valerie, for her part, was flying through the hallways attempting to reach Angel. She had to tell him what she just saw about Comet. Down in the armory, Gorgon hissed angrily as she worked on the spell she had used on Comet. Apparently, it was flawed enough for the griffin to overpower it. She could only wonder what the Bat Pony would do to it. As she worked, a changeling ran up to her and reported that the griffin had gotten away. She screeched at that and thought while she worked.
"Get somebody over to Shining Armor right away and report that Griffin attacked 2 fellow guards and is crazy. She won't get very far with us and that guard after her."
Shining Armor sat with his head in his hooves, wondering what to do. As if the threat of the attack on princesses weren't bad enough, now he had a rogue griffin to deal with. Apparently this was some kind of cosmic joke, since all this was happening before the biggest event of the year. He darkly wondered if the griffin was in the plot to attack the princesses, since she attacked 2 of the key guards, Comet and Blackberry. Comet was supposed to guard Princess Celestia, and Blackberry was to be near the royal table where the princesses ate. Finally, he put his hooves down and said, "No, we'll continue as planned. If they are well enough, they can stay at their posts." The pony he was talking to was Paradox. He nodded his head and continued on. Angel bounced happily in her new armor she had been fitted with days earlier. It was now all dark purple with a blue eye at the chest. It covered her entire back and even came with an awesome-looking helmet and new weapon, claws. With all of it on, she thought she looked rather awesome. As she squealed with delight at her new garb, she heard the bathroom door open and slam shut. Curious, she spun to see a mass of white feathers and brown fur tackle her. Reacting instinctively, Angel brought her hooves around her assailant, effectively pinning the pony to her. She rolled in the air, flapping her wings to get upright and landed squarely on top of the intruder, bringing her newly forged claws to the neck of the body. A pair of brilliant gold irises looked up at her, along with a black beak. It contorted into kind of an angry look. "Valerie!" Angel shouted, immediately turning off her attack mode and hugging the griffin underneath her. "Where have you been? I couldn't find you or Comet anywhere." The Bat Pony squeezed the griffin into a tighter hug, effectively wringing out what little breath Valerie had left in her. Before Valerie could even get a word out, Angel leaped up, giddy as a school filly, and bounced in place. "So, what you think of my new armor? Isn't this so cool? I got a new chest piece and a helmet, and look at these claws. They're so awesome." Angel grimaced at the set of purplish claws that are being thrust into her face at the moment by the goofy Bat Pony that she called friend. Any farther, and she would have claimed at least one of her eyes. That's cool, Angel, but, the griffin tried to say before she was cut off by Angel. "I know," the Bat Pony shouted again. "Aren't they amazing? I can finally fight like you." The armorer said he was asked to make custom weapons by Shining Armor for the gala to complement each guard's fighting style. But I never expected them to be this cool. To accelerate her point, Angel took up 2 battle poses. One on her rear legs, holding the claws above her head like a ninja, and the other standing on all 4s, holding the claw up to her mouth like a cat. Yeah, Valerie had to admit, they were pretty cool. But she had more pressing matters than aesthetic appearances right now. "Angel, I really need to," before Angel again invaded her personal space. She reached out with one hoof and lifted one of Valerie's claws up to her face, before lifting her own claw to examine them side by side. "They're so much longer and cooler," Angel stated with a hint of sadness in her voice, before her happy mood kicked back in. "Still, you've got the coolest set of claws there is.
bird claws. I've got claws that look like they're from, what's those comic books? Batman and Spider-Colt. Angel, or Super Saiyan. Angel, or the Green Torch. Angel. Angel gasped before continuing. Wait, what about the X-Ponies? Is there that one stallion who... Angel!
Valerie shouted, breaking the Bat Pony's reveling. The large golden eyes she had darted up to meet Valerie's own, and the Griffin took a deep breath.
Angel, there's a serious problem with Comet,
she stated seriously. Angel's eyes shrunk, and before she could say anything, Valerie continued.
Angel, he's in deep trouble with some really bad ponies. I saw him get up last night and wander down to the armory and... Wait,
Angel interrupted.
Why were you following him last night? He was acting suspicious,
Valerie flustered. Angel narrowed her eyes to the Griffin, who clearly wore a nervous face there a couple seconds before returning to being serious.
That's not the point, Angel. Comet, why were you following him?
Angel almost growled, silencing Valerie. Angel hated to be lied to, and she knew Valerie was hiding something.
What business do you have following my Colt friend?
Valerie's chest dropped into nothingness as her heart felt like it stopped for a second. She suddenly had the sneaking suspicion she had just revealed to Comet's mare friend something that she should never have found out about. The silence quickly became tense as Angel's eyes narrowed, her slit pupils boring into Angel's own round ones. Valerie tried to make a cautious step backwards, but Angel stepped forward at the same time.
What were you trying to do with him?
Angel snarled, now fully angry. She knew Valerie was holding something now, something big involving her and Comet.
I was trying...
Valerie stammered before Angel tackled her this time. It wasn't playful in the slightest. Angel quickly pinned Valerie into submission and glared daggers into her eyes.
What have you been doing with my Colt friend?
Angel nearly shouted. Now scared for her life in a way those black ponies couldn't have scared her, Valerie began to tremble under the Bat Pony, who went from cute and adorable to downright terrifying in about 10 seconds. She gulped hard, trying to calm herself, and barely managed to speak in a small, squeaky voice.
Comet, we kinda... Say it!
Angel shouted at her.
We've, kinda been having a thing going on,
Valerie stated, utterly terrified. Angel was quiet for a few seconds before she spoke again, hissing like a venomous serpent.
What do you mean by thing? We've kinda... we kissed,
Valerie stammered out. A soft-throated growl escaped Angel's throat as she began to raise her left front hoof. One of the two were claws attached to it. Valerie closed her eyes, bracing for the razor-sharp material to contact with her face when Angel spoke again.
How many times?
Angel choked out.
3.
Valerie almost shrieked. Angel let loose a cry of frustration, and Valerie could hear the sound of her hoof coming down. As she waited for the pain, she instead heard a hoof collide with the floor and the sound of metal clinking against stone. Valerie opened her eyes to see Angel's face, pupils narrowed with anger, and fangs and teeth bared before sharp pain struck her in the right cheek. Valerie managed to see Angel's hoof pass away from her face as she shook off the other claw. Valerie didn't react as she struck her again and again.
You stupid feather brain!
Angel shouted in anger.
How could you do that with my Colt friend?
Angel reared up and hit the Griffin with a fourth shot, but Valerie's claw shot out and caught it, holding her hoof in place. Valerie panted, but she managed to talk.
There. You got in 3 free shots. You hit me anymore, and I'll hit back.
Angel cried out in anger and yelled.
Don't you tell me what to do!
As quickly as she could, Angel brought her right hoof across Valerie's face before a powerful kick was delivered to her stomach. Angel gasped as she lost her breath and realized her armor didn't wrap underneath her. As she wheezed, a black claw shot up and scratched the pristine helmet the Bat Pony was wearing, causing her head to whip away. Seizing her momentary advantage, Valerie pushed with both of her claws and paws to shove Angel off of her. Angel flew backwards and landed on her back, 2 feet away. The two females scrambled with their hooves and claws, and Valerie tackled Angel this time. Valerie frantically trying to grab a hold of her hooves, but Angel's armor had spiky points on it, scratching the griffin as she pressed herself against her friend, or in this case, nemesis now. Angel responded by roaring angrily as she spun, attempting to best Valerie's efforts to subdue her. She managed to only deliver 2 swift strikes to the griffin, one in the air and one as they hit the floor, before the griffin clawed the front visor of her helmet. Angel just barely managed to close her eyes in time to feel the claws just barely graze her eyelid, not breaking the skin. If her eye would have been open, she might have gone blind. Angry beyond regular brawling now, Angel viciously headbutted the griffin, and while she was stunned, buried her fangs in the griffin's neck, getting a disgustingly copper taste of blood on her tongue. Valerie shouted in pain as she felt the teeth break into her skin and flailed out with her claws, finding a weak spot in Angel's armor, her wing joint. As Valerie's claw broke skin as well, Angel wailed in the exact same way, pulling her teeth out of Valerie's neck. With a final push, Valerie shoved Angel away and brought a claw up to her neck, trying to stem the flow of blood. Angel landed in a heap on the other side of the room, unmoving, except for her nursing her wing. Valerie turned to face a mirror, and she examined the wound that was on her neck. It looked like something from that one monster movie, Vlad the Vampire Bat Pony. She had 2 little pinpricks right near the base of her neck, and it bled, not gushing, but enough to worry her. As she tried to wash the wound clean, she heard a faint sobbing sound from the other side of the room. Spinning around, she realized it was Angel.
Why? She sobbed. Why do you get to be so lucky? Comets never kiss me, even on our dates. What makes you so special?
Angel broke out into louder sobs, and Valerie felt a pit in her stomach grow, threatening to consume her.
Angel,
she tried to start, but Angel cut her off again.
Tonight was supposed to be special.
The hurt Bat Pony cried.
Me and Comet at the Grand Galloping Gala, all alone. I was hoping he would finally do it.
Valerie gritted her teeth as she heard her friend talk. Why was she so special? Comet had everything he wanted with Angel, so why was Valerie trying to take him from her? Tears began to form in the griffin's own eyes as Angel continued.
They say if you kiss a pony you love at the gala, you'll be happy forever. I was hoping Comet would do that tonight.
Angel broke out into a full bawling at that point, and Angel started to cry herself. Angel needed him just as badly as he needed her. So, what was Valerie doing? Trying to live a pipe dream to escape her own homeland? Regret, among other emotions, crashed down upon Valerie, and she started sobbing louder than Angel. Angel looked up at the griffin, who had collapsed on the floor, and heard her speak.
I'm so sorry, Angel, she shouted. I'm sorry for trying to take Comet away from you. I never wanted to hurt you. But being with him just makes me happy. I didn't want to lose you, and I was a jerk. I'm sorry.
The griffin sobbed harder than she had ever done before, buried beneath her own guilt and self-loathing. The Bat Pony, without any reason to, slowly stood up on her shaky hooves and wobbled over to the emotionally distraught griffin, putting her hoof around her, laying next to her like Comet had done back on that stormy day. Valerie flinched at her touch, but Angel persisted, hugging the griffin close and trying to calm her down. Valerie finally calmed down enough to look at Angel. The Bat Pony spoke up.
Valerie, I know what it's like to be so happy that you never want to lose it. Comet makes me happy too. So happy that I never want to leave him. But I'm a monster,
the griffin retorted, nearly crying again.
I'm no better than those pigs back at my own home.
Angel gulped but pressed on.
No, you're better than them, Valerie. I don't know what your race is like, I know you're nothing like them.
Valerie sniffed at that and grumbled.
If you knew what they were like, you wouldn't say that.
Angel sat silently for a couple seconds, but steeled her will and said,
Valerie, you're my best friend next to Comet, and while I may be angry at you for what you did, no amount of hurting you or Comet will change what's happened. My father's always told me it's easier to forgive and forget than to carry grudges. You're a good Griffin at heart, and I know that. But Comet is my Colt friend. He asked me out.
Valerie grimaced at that, but didn't argue. She knew Angel was right.
But why do you get to be happy, and I can't?
Valerie moaned.
You can be happy too,
Angel chided.
You just need to find your own dream stallion. But you have my dream Griffin, stallion.
Valerie retorted bitterly.
Valerie,
Angel spoke softly.
There's more than just one stallion in Equestria. There's one out there, just waiting for you to find him.
Valerie didn't respond to that, but continued to hick for a while. Finally, Angel stood up and adjusted her armor, which had been knocked out of place in a couple of areas, allowing Valerie to stand. When the two of them were standing, Angel locked eyes with Valerie, her best friend, and held out a hoof with a smile.
Friends?
Angel asked. Valerie stared at the hoof, unsure of what to do. She was baffled by the ability to forgive that this pony possessed, especially after what Valerie had done to her. But she tentatively reached out her claw and shook it.
Friends,
she said, a little less confidently than she would have liked. As she shook it, Angel jumped to her and wrapped her in a nice big hug. Valerie stood there, still again unsure of what to do, but eventually smiled. While Valerie had friends back in the Griffin Kingdom, Angel definitely was better than all of them put together. When the two finally released each other, Angel grinned widely at her, just like her old self.
So, what do you plan on doing with...
Valerie began, but stopped as she remembered why she had initially come here.
Comet!
She shouted. Grabbing Angel's hoof, she pulled the bat pony along and said,
There's not much time. Comet's in a huge amount of trouble. Come on.
The music played softly in the background, as Princess Luna shuffled uneasily around the countless ponies who all made a point of bowing at her and commenting on how lovely the moon was tonight. All the poor Princess of the Night could do was graciously accept compliment after compliment as she tried to make her way over to her sister. Luna was at the gala, her first ever, and cursed herself while taking back the entrance through the gardens. As the midnight blue alicorn tried walking at an even pace, she soon found it fruitless to go against the tide of oncoming ponies. Sighing to herself, she turned around and trotted over to the grand ballroom. The ballroom was done in a spectacular fashion. Large tapestries bearing the equestrian royal seal and images of both princesses, Celestia and herself, hung in a wild array around the room. The brilliant full moon she'd worked on raising shone like the sun through the 3-story tall windows. A magnificent fountain sat in the middle of the ballroom, glittering wonderfully. Up on the stage, several ponies played a soft tune as one brilliant white unicorn sat behind them. She had on a rather large set of purple-hued glasses and the most outrageous mane Luna had ever seen, electric blue and spiky. Luna secretly wondered if she could do the same thing with her own mane. However, the pony seemed to be more entrapped by another on stage, a gray pony with a long black mane playing a cello. Luna couldn't tell what the white unicorn was thinking, but she somehow didn't want to know. What ponies did with their lives didn't concern her. Upon realizing she was staring at the band, Luna quickly blushed and moved over to her table, a rather large banquet table with a squishy chair in her favorite color, onyx. As she sat in the chair, she felt her rump sink in and slightly wiggled back and forth, making herself comfortable. Once she was, several stewards came by and offered her various things. Luna graciously accepted a moon pie, her favorite treat, and a cup of sparkling grape juice. As she munched on her treat, her magnificent sapphire eyes scanned the crowd of ponies. Several night guards strolled up and took their positions around the lunar princess, staying as rigid as they could. Hazarding a try at conversation, Luna cleared her throat and spoke in the Royal Canterlot voice. How is thou today? Apparently every pony in a 20-foot radius thought she was talking to them, and got a jumbled response from all of them, excluding the guard she was trying to talk to. Luna just smiled awkwardly and gave a nice reply before sipping on her juice again. Celestia had insisted this is how Luna could connect to their subjects more, but the Princess of the Night had never felt more alone. She sat at the table, munching away at her moon pie, and occasionally glanced back to her only real friend, the brilliantly glowing rock behind her. However, upon returning her attention to the gala, she thought she saw a pony she recognized. He was a light blue unicorn with wavy white hair, brown eyes, and an hourglass cutie mark, and a red jacket. Luna blinked twice before he disappeared, positively sure she knew that pony. On the other side of the castle, right near the entrance, Princess Celestia stood gracefully, smiling and personally welcomed every pony that arrived. Her guards, a unicorn and a Pegasus, stood attentive at her right, glaring at each pony walking up. Celestia had not wanted them there, but Shining Armor insisted that at least 2 guards be there to protect her. He had said there was a threat against herself and her sister Luna, as well as her niece, but Celestia tried to shrug it off. She was used to threats against herself after 1,000 years of dealing with the stiff-necked Griffin Kingdom, the proud tribes of the Marengeti, and even the race of horses over in Saddle Arabia. Thankfully, diplomacy from the pony who raised the sun always won out, but there were several instances she had to marshal the royal army just to be sure. Celestia shook her head slightly, bobbing her beautifully flowing mane of green, pink, indigo, and blue. She kept up her regal smile and continued to greet ponies, one by one. Unknown to either princess or to their niece and husband, Gorgon licked her lips in anticipation. She stood in line to enter the gala, cloaked as some rich pony she had knocked out. Without them knowing, her group of changelings had successfully infiltrated the royal guard. They had built up enough store of love to power them through the entire attack in a renowned place. This was to be her shining moment, the day she had done what her mother, Chrysalis, couldn't. Hopefully, by taking control of the royal sisters and all of Canterlot, the changeling princess would gain her mother's approval. She danced nervously in her disguise, slightly raising and lowering her hooves. The other ponies, the snobbish lot, sniffed at her, and even asked if she could hold it in. Gorgon grumbled to herself, wishing she could retaliate. But, however, she needed to keep her cover, at least until she was at the princess. After what felt like hours, Gorgon was next in line to meet the princess. Her newest little pet was right where she wanted him, next to Celestia. Comet, that was his name, stared off blankly into space, not even making eye contact with her. The other guard, Hilgrind, pretended to check another faceless guest for weapons. Gorgon had to admit, both of her pawns looked rather stunning in their armor. Comet in particular. He had a freshly forged spear that crackled every now and then with a small arc of electricity, wore no helmet but had on a new piece of armor, one with a larger collar that covered his entire back and held a usual turquoise star on the front. When the pony in front of her walked in, Gorgon gulped. It was now her turn to meet the princess. Trotting slowly, Gorgon reviewed the spell she had to use to subdue Celestia in her head, making sure she could cast it quickly enough. Her whelp Hilgrind flickered his eyes up at her glance and gave a small nod. He was ready. "Hello," came the almost ethereal voice of the Solar Princess. "Welcome to the Grand Galloping Gala, Miss de Trotsky." The beautiful princess gave her a sincere smile, and Gorgon's disguise and the changeling princess smiled back. "Oh, I'm well received, my liege," she droned in her best sarcasm. She knelt slightly and locked eyes with the Princess of the Sun. She saw the princess begin to narrow her eyes and knew it was time. Drawing upon her stores of love, Gorgon gritted her teeth, and a bolt of green magic struck the princess right between the eyes. A small sense of satisfaction came from watching the eyes of the Solar Princess widen before rolling up. Gorgon had practiced that spell for weeks for this very moment. As the princess began to slump, Hilgrind jumped up and grabbed the Solar Princess, and Gorgon shot another bolt of magic. Celestia was too powerful a simple stunning spell to work, so she began to recover as Gorgon worked on subduing her mind. Somewhere behind her, she could hear ponies screaming and running, but her focus was containing for 1,000 years worth of knowledge in the princess's mind. Every time Gorgon felt she had the advantage, Celestia would push back with some mental discipline she had learned. The princess bucked wildly, trying to throw off Hilgrind as Gorgon slowly began to gain control over her. The princess was not invincible, though. Using her full stores of Comet's love, Gorgon finally gained the leeway she was looking for, and the Solar Princess slumped to the floor. Gorgon breathed heavily, trying to recover her own stamina. The princess wasn't easy to subdue, several hundred times harder than the average pony. However, subduing normal ponies' minds was too easy. Panting, she nodded to Hilgrind, who let loose a horrible screech, silencing the ponies inside. As they looked around, the guards all nodded to each other, and at once, they all began firing off green bolts of magic, even the Pegasus guards. Ponies began to fall over, stunned, while others run around, screaming in panic. Luna barely had time to react as her own guard turned around and shot her with bolts of magic. With her mind suddenly blank and an inability to move with her own limbs, Luna watched as several more guards rushed over and jumped on the table, firing more bolts. Being an alicorn, Luna had a strong resistance to magic, like her sister Celestia. However, she wasn't impervious, and after repeated blasts without one of her own in return, she began to fall asleep. She could faintly hear Shining Armor's voice shouting something unintelligible before she felt sleep take over. Shining Armor gritted his teeth as he looked around. None of the guards were responding to his commands, and he had no idea what was going on. Surrounding himself with a magical shield, he ran off to find the princesses before the situation got any worse. Upon reaching the front door, his already pearly white coat paled even farther as he saw the pony erupt into green flames, shedding his disguise along with the guard. When the flames vanished, a changeling queen along with a worker stood there, grinning at each other as they walked over to the unconscious form of Celestia. Feeling a couple of pings from behind, Shining turned to see the whole horde of changelings, each wearing golden armor of the royal guard, charge at him. "No!" was all he managed to shout before the horde descended upon him. Without releasing the shield, Shining fought back at the changelings. He wasn't captain of the guard for nothing. He delivered several swift hoofs to the faces of the changelings, which had run through his shield. The shield was meant to deflect magic, not actual beings, so it was almost useless now. Drawing upon his vast stores of magic, Shining felt him float for a couple seconds before he landed in the ballroom. Luckily, his magical wards would not prevent teleportation spells, something he had in place of emergencies like this. "Princess Luna, we have to go, now!" he shouted anxiously, running over to the table to find her. He had cast a spell which allowed him to locate the princesses easily long ago, but to his horror, found her at the center of a circle of buzzing changelings, each in the Night Guard's armor. Cursing to himself, he charged the changelings, attempting to break their circle. Instead, more changelings seemed to pour out of nowhere, each trying to hit him with magic. Deterred by the sheer number of changelings, Shining backed away and shouted, "Cadence! Where are you?" A soft voice responded from over the loud buzzing and screaming, "Shining! Help me!" Spinning around, he saw his beautiful pink wife backed up against a corner while she tried to fend off the changelings' magic with the same shield Shining was using himself. Cowering behind her were several ponies, each too terrified to do anything. Reacting instinctively, Shining ran to his wife, determined to protect her. "Get the hell away from my wife!" he shouted with a voice that shook the room. The changeling spun around and frowned as he charged. The first few ducked out of his way, but he didn't part the crowd like he'd hoped to. Instead, one rather clever stood its ground and braced itself. By a stroke of luck, or cosmic bodies aligning, the changeling shot of bolt and magic at Shining, and in a split second, its horn passed through the shield. The bolt of green magic flew forward and struck the captain in his chest, causing him to stumble and let go of the magic keeping the spell up. "Shining!" Cadence screamed as he slid forward. The entire changeling crowd jumped on him. She watched in horror as her husband was mercilessly shot, bolt after bolt, just like her aunt. Turtling behind her shield, a couple of tears fell from her big purple eyes as she watched them slowly form a circle around him, keeping him in a trance just like Luna. The rest growled angrily as they shot a couple bolts at her, but they bounced uselessly against the shield. As Gorgon strode into the gala, she noted all the unconscious ponies, as well as her soldiers saluting her. Her pet Comet followed close behind, lost in a trance with his eyes glowing green. Slowly, she began to laugh to herself as the full gravity of what she had done hit her. She and her whelps had surprised the Canterlot Castle, overpowered the princesses, and were now feeding off of the countless ponies, restoring their used-up caches of food. Her laugh got louder, and soon became a cackle as she stood near the glorious golden fountain. Her changelings buzzed in approval as 4 dragged in Princess Celestia by her mane and tail, eventually depositing her next to her precious sister, Luna.
The time of Celestia and Luna is over,
she mused to herself.
The age of Chrysalis and Gorgon has begun.
Turning to Comet, she extended a hoof and raised his chin to meet her face.
And it wouldn't be possible without you, my dear. You gave me so much food to defeat Celestia. Oh, I will reward you. You'll be my pet forever.
The changeling princess slowly leaned over to kiss him, and just before she did, a new voice rang out.
I swear to Celestia I will kill you if you touch him again,
came an unfamiliar voice. Comet's eyes began to focus as Gorgon pulled away, searching for the voice. Angel, he moaned softly. Much to Gorgon's horror, a large group of ponies stood in the entryway, all glaring furiously at the horde of changelings. A bat pony in full armor stared directly at her, along with a rather large and angry-looking griffin. The loud cry of a phoenix echoed in the hallway as the normally beautiful bird was literally on fire, staring dead at Gorgon. The tension in the room built to a breaking point as several seconds went by, just as the bat pony yelled one word.
Charge!
It didn't take long for the ponies to reach the changelings. Angel didn't seem to care what other ponies were doing. Her big eyes were locked on the only target she wanted to get, that large changeling who almost kissed her cold friend. As she ran, several shouts came out from the ponies surrounding her. For the princess! One shout out.
Honor or death?
A scratchy voice shouted. Bugs! Gross! A unicorn shouted next to her. The 2 most deafening shouts, however, belonged to both Valerie and Philomena, who were letting out piercing shrieks that seemed to paralyze several changelings. As the wave of ponies grew closer, Gorgon narrowed her eyes and growled.
Remember this day,
she shouted to her horde.
For today is the day you regain your honor as changelings.
The sound of the collision was deafening. Bolts of magic flew everywhere, ranging in all sorts of colors from green to raspberry red to gold. Ponies and changelings alike shouted as they viciously began to attack each other. Philomena flew overhead, dodging the occasional bolt of green magic and raining down flames upon the mass of black. Several changelings screamed in panic and even ran around on fire, causing a panic amongst them. However, since the changelings retained the royal guard armor, they seemed to have the edge of hoof-to-hoof combat. The ponies found their advance grind to a screeching halt as waves of changelings, some even on fire, returned to their charge. Angel, the only bat pony in full armor, did what she did best. Using her newly forged claws, Angel jabbed and swiped the changelings, leaving long cuts on their hard, shiny hides. Her whole focus was to get to that larger changeling, but if she had to wade through all the little ones first, then so be it. To her right, Valerie was met up with just as much success, having almost a feral look to her. Few things were more terrifying than a large griffin clawing down 3 changelings in one swipe. She wreaked havoc on the horde, trying to subdue the ponies. Gorgon gritted her teeth as she fired bolt after magical bolt, attacking the ponies at random. 1 or 2 had managed to reach her, but if Princess Celestia couldn't be a match for her magic, then these ponies were nothing. As one Pegasus flew towards her, she locked eyes with him. Leroy Flankins! The pony shouted as he dove for the changing princess. Gorgon reared back, ready for the impact, but instead brought her hooves down on the Pegasus, crushing him to the floor. As the Pegasus shouted out in pain, Gorgon delivered an over-the-top kick to the pony's face, silencing him immediately. Returning her gaze to the bat pony and griffin, Gorgon fired off several more bolts of magical energy at them, managing to only hit her own whelps that jumped in front. Screaming in frustration, Gorgon whipped around and pulled Comet over to her, who was somehow still in a daze from Gorgon. As Gorgon neared him, a loud scream pierced the air and she looked up. She had only a split second to react to what was happening, but she could see a mass of fire descending upon her. Razor-sharp claws met her face a second later, along with an intense heat, and Gorgon screamed. Philomena seemed to get savage delight as she maimed the changeling's face, attempting to gouge out her eyes. Instead, her claws just got mangled in her mane, ripping out parts with every movement. Now in full panic mode and in fear of her life, Gorgon reared back, ignoring the searing heat with the intense pain coming from her scalp, and flailed in the direction of the mass heat. Her hooves seemed to strike something, and with her eyes shut the whole time, felt the heat and claws try to pull away. It successfully managed to take another clump of her mane out as well, making Gorgon howl out in pain. Recoiling from a shot in her wing, Philomena backed off slightly, knowing a wild animal is the most dangerous. Right now, that changeling was in survival mode, and she would do whatever she had to. Her wing was hurt, but never backed away entirely. Instead, Philomena drew upon her own magical stores and shrieked again, unleashing a torrent of fire at the changeling. Unfortunately, Comet, Angel, Valerie, and Philomena herself were in that blast radius. As the changeling screamed in fear, the pony seemed to wake up, panicking himself that he was catching on fire. His shout of terror caused Philomena to release the torrent just as a bolt of magical green flew at her. It safely passed through her feathers as she flapped to gain altitude, but a body slammed into her, causing her to lose her balance. As the two plummeted to the ground, Philomena willed herself to erupt into more flames. At her command, she exploded into a huge fireball and crashed into the fray, fire exploding in all directions. Ponies and changelings alike had fire wash over them, with only a lucky few dodging the massive wave. Gorgon managed to weakly cast a spell to protect her and Comet as the wall of fire approached. The spell shielded them easily before dissipating, leaving only the two on the ground. Comet's back was to the changeling princess, whimpering and nursing a whole side of his body as his armor glowed a dull red. Gorgon was in worse shape, though, weak and bleeding from the phoenix's assault. Burned strands of her mane lay on the floor next to her head, but the changeling managed to pick herself up, moaning weakly from the pain and the numbness in her limbs. She bared her teeth and cast a numbing spell on herself to ease the pain. She staggered over to Comet, collapsing on top of him as his watery red eyes turned to her with fear. Luckily, Gorgon's numbing spell worked well, because she could hear her carapace sizzle as she lay on top of his faintly glowing armor. Forcing herself to concentrate through her spinning head and cloudy vision, Gorgon shot a bolt of magic at Comet, muddling his mind again. His gaze went slack and Gorgon dove into him. She felt her lips meet his and a surge of emotions washed over her like healing water. Drawing upon her newest reserves of magic, she felt her carapace begin to itch as it healed itself from the burns and quelled the bleeding from her scalp. Her head stopped spinning and soon she got the feeling back in her legs. She broke for a split second to breathe and looked up to the fight. Her whelps didn't do so well at the fire wave, because most of them were laying weakly on the floor. The ponies now had the advantage since some of the unicorns had enough time to shield themselves and the others. Her more intelligent changelings had also shielded themselves and were now enraged at the non-burned ponies. Returning her gaze to the Pegasus below her, Gorgon dove in again. His breathing was weak as she could feel his heart racing. She knew unless she healed him quickly, he was going to die. Feeling a sense of concern for him, she worked the same healing magic on him, soothing the burns and restoring his blood flow. She kept herself locked to him and felt a twinge of his thoughts. Normally, when under the spell, ponies' thoughts were non-existent, since they had to have their minds blank to be controlled. However, Gorgon realized he wasn't under her control as she healed him. Instead, she felt his mind find an image that was connected to what seemed to be a deeper pool of love and regret. As she remained connected to him, an image of a tall golden pony mare with green mane pulled around to one side and sparkling tangerine eyes manifested in her mind. Why he was thinking about whoever this was, Gorgon didn't know, but she welcomed the torrential flood of emotions from him. Once she was sure he wasn't going to die, she released her lips from his and backed away. was faint, but she could hear him moan. No. Feeling an immense amount of emotion she had hardly known existed, Gorgon reached over and rubbed Comet's forehead and shushed him. Shh, she whispered. It'll be all right, Comet. It'll be all right. As she comforted him, though, a swift kick was delivered to her face from a bat claw. Gorgon howled in pain as she rolled away, bringing her hooves up to her face. Peeking through one of the holes in her hooves, Gorgon saw a rather angry-looking griffin glaring daggers at her. Don't you ever touch him again, Valerie shouted. Enraged, Gorgon leaped on the griffin, wrapping her hooves around her. Using her two big front teeth, Gorgon buried them into Valerie's wing, snapping the joint. The griffin shrieked in pain as she fell to the ground on top of Gorgon. With her hooves still wrapped around her, Gorgon spun over to get on top of Valerie. Releasing her, Gorgon glared directly into Valerie's eyes, ready to shoot lasers at them. Valerie hesitated for a second in fear, and Gorgon let her predator instinct take over. Hoof blow after hoof blow pounded into Valerie's face as the griffin tried to claw at the changeling. Lost in her rage, Gorgon used magic to pick up Valerie and lifted her into the air. Unable to move because of the green magic, Valerie had a second to react as she was thrown to the ground. Gorgon cackled gleefully as the griffin shouted in pain and repeated it, a savage grin on her face. After about the seventh time, Valerie's shoulder gave a loud crack and she screamed in more pain than ever before. Her left arm and claw went limp and she felt herself fly at Gorgon, unable to do anything. The changeling reared back and impacted her hooves into the griffin, cracking ribs and knocking the breath out of her. Grinning like a mad pony, Gorgon stood over the griffin, intoxicated with power over the weaker being. As she formed another spell, a small metal object struck her in the eye. Screaming in pain, she closed both and rubbed her face as a hoof collided with her cheek, knocking her off balance. She spun with a hoof, but bucked with her rear legs. Ha! Came a voice with a strong foreign accent. You'll have to do better than that. Opening her eyes, Gorgon saw a light blue pony with wavy white mane and a red coat grin slyly at her. Growling, Gorgon brought her front hoof around to try and smack him out of the air, but he nimbly dodged it. Concentrating, she tried to trap him in her magical grip, but a sparkling blue aura shimmered around him. I already thought of that, he replied confidently, but as he spoke, a changeling grabbed him from behind and his eyes went wide. I didn't think of that, he said with a hint of fear in his voice as he was pulled backwards into a group of changelings. Gorgon grunted and turned around to finish the job with the griffin, but her eyes shrunk in fear as a bat pony, in full armor minus her helmet, stood over her toy. Her big golden eyes were locked on the weak pony, and Gorgon shouted in frustration. She had everything planned. Everything. She had taken over the royal guard, subdued the princesses and the captain of the guard, and even had her source of power completely within her grasp. Why did everything have to go wrong now? The bat pony's head whipped up and locked with Gorgon. Suddenly, Gorgon knew why it had gone all wrong. She didn't kill this pony when she had a chance. Not willing to make the same mistake twice, she screamed angrily and began to charge the pony. Angel's eyes shrunk as she saw the rampaging changeling drawing closer and pushed Comet away. Bracing herself, she stared down the changeling, and just before she reached her, Angel ducked and rolled between her hooves, slashing at the hole-ridden hooves that thundered over her. It wasn't much more than a scratch, but hopefully it would make her pause for a second. As she came out of the roll, Angel darted over to Comet. Before she could reach him, several changelings in armor jumped on her. She easily bucked off a couple, still weak from Philomena's fireball, which Angel and Valerie had avoided by jumping into the fountain. One, however, clung to her and grinned wickedly. Reacting based on pure instinct, Angel let her right legs give out and slammed down on the changeling as he fired off a bolt of green magic. It collided with her as her weight pressed down on him. Instantly, Angel's vision blurred and her legs felt heavy, but she didn't pass out. The changeling, who hadn't finished casting the spell, rolled off of her, losing its grip. Staggering back to her hooves, Angel tried to find Comet in the mess of colors of her vision. As she looked around, she couldn't find Comet. Behind her, Gorgon was pounding another pony into the floor angrily with her magic, a green unicorn. Unaware Angel was still up, Gorgon paused as she heard the bat pony shout, Comet! The word rang louder in the ballroom as the white Pegasus twitched. His thoughts were slow to return to him, but as he tried to think, they came back much quicker. He slowly opened his eyes, feeling unusually groggy. Comet tried to remember what had happened, recalling he was underneath a changeling, then felt like he was on fire. Pushing himself to his hooves, Comet shook his head, wondering if it had all just been a dream. Instead, he felt his stomach curl as he looked around. Ponies and changelings were laying on the floor, while others were still fighting or were tending to their wounded comrades. Spinning around, Comet saw Angel in armor staggering around, right next to a weeping and clearly hurt Valerie. Behind him, the large changeling roared in anger and began to run to them.
Comet!
Came an unfamiliar voice from behind him.
You have to choose now!
He spun to see a blue unicorn in a red coat grappling with a changeling.
Do it!
He shouted.
You have to choose one of them now! Comet, choose one! Now!
That one phrase bounced around in his mind, echoing with varied intensity as time seemed to slow down for him. He saw the larger changeling approaching Angel and wanted to go save her, but Valerie lay in a crumpled heap on the floor, moaning slightly. Inside Comet's mind, instead of a buzzing with dilemma of who was more important to him, or rather some large introspective view of both Angel and Valerie, it was just blank. There was no time to choose. Instead, there was just time to act. If he had to choose one or the other, that would be for later. Right now, they both needed his help as a friend and stallion. He needed to save them both. Instead of locking eyes directly with one of them, Comet's stunned gaze narrowed his red eyes and locked onto his target, the changeling. He felt himself start to move before he could think, and soon he was running directly at the changeling. As he ran, he extended his wings and flapped them furiously, hoping to gain more speed. As they both approached the bat pony, Comet leaped into the air, directly over the staggering bat pony, and collided with the furious changeling, who seemed to be surprised with his counterattack. Comet felt he knew this changeling, but it wasn't until they had hit the ground that he remembered her. Gorgon landed squarely on her back, surprised by how hard the Pegasus had hit her. The next thing she registered was several kicks directed at her midsection, a particularly sensitive area. Growling angrily, she returned a couple kicks and caught Comet in the neck, making him lose his balance, flying above her and falling to Gorgon's left, gasping heavily. Gorgon scrambled back to her hooves, ready to attack, but two sharp razors scratched her face. Screaming in surprise and pain, Gorgon turned and smashed a hoof into Angel's side, sending her backwards.
Enough!
Gorgon screamed at the top of her lungs, sending out a pulse in the air that pushed back the unconscious changelings and ponies around her. Comet and Angel both managed to hold up against the pulse, but Comet was still choking as Angel tried to keep her balance. The spell was wearing off, but it was still hard for her to control all of her motor functions. As Gorgon looked down, she glared angrily at the two ponies before her and cast some magic. A sickly green aura shrouded both Comet and Angel at the same time, yanking them off the ground and directly to her. Comet, still struggling to breathe but getting air now, managed a somewhat angry look that, to Gorgon, looked more like discomfort. Angel tried to do the same, but couldn't tell which of the three Gorgons to look at. The changeling princess pulled them closer and scowled, baring her rather large fangs at them.
I should kill you both now,
she growled, voice full of hate and malice.
But, luckily for you, Comet, I need you. This one, though,
she said, shaking Angel,
is completely expendable.
Comet desperately tried to work out a word or two, but he felt himself getting smashed into the ground. As a Pegasus, he had a naturally thicker and sturdier bone structure for impacts like this, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Gorgon's magic continued to hold him, and he looked up helplessly at Angel, who was now directly in front of the wickedly smiling changeling. Angel's limbs suddenly snapped out in all four directions, and she gave a loud scream. Comet wasn't sure what was going on, but he knew he had to stop it.
Angel!
He yelled as he struggled. The changeling shot him a nasty look and returned to the bat pony, whose limbs she was trying to tear out of their sockets. Comet struggled like never before, feeling an intense amount of energy course through his body. The energy, in turn, seemed to amp up his muscles as he pushed even harder against his magical restraints. A wicked laugh began to come from the changeling, as Angel's eyes shrunk in fear, staring directly into hers. With her concentration on Angel, Gorgon's magical hold on Comet weakened enough to where he broke loose. Utterly furious, and now able to do something about it, Comet leaped up at Gorgon, who turned to see his hoof collide with her. Gorgon screamed as the Pegasus descended upon her, kicking her face and any exposed body part. Angel fell to the floor after the magic holding her up instantly faded, but picked her head up to see Comet mercilessly beating down the changeling. Kick after kick blurred together for Comet. He had never been so furious in his life, and now he was lost in it. It didn't matter what the changeling did. He was going to hurt her for what she had done to Angel, Valerie, and himself. She had a tough exterior, but he could feel it start to buckle under his repeated attacks. The changeling was screaming in fear now, desperately trying to stop the barrage of knocking away his hooves. Comet was not to be denied this time, though. As he continued, he bit down on the mane of the changeling while he kicked and pulled up, causing her to scream louder. As he did, though, he made the mistake of stopping his barrage, giving the changeling time to push off of him. She kicked him directly into the air and made a mad dash out from underneath him, attempting to get away. Luckily for her, she did, and backed up to the fountain, staring in fear at the white pony, splattered in turquoise liquid Gorgon knew was her own blood. The Pegasus landed and trotted over to her, slowly but deliberately.
Please,
Gorgon stammered in fear, cradling her own wounded chest.
please, mercy.
Comet stopped at her voice and stared at her. Her pleading struck something inside of him, something that made all his rage vanish. He blinked twice and looked at the defeated Earth Pony. Wait, wasn't he just fighting a changeling? The Earth Pony looked up at him with sad tangerine eyes, partially hidden under a vibrant green mane. Her golden coat seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, and Comet found his breath that had left him. Nova was sitting in front of him, pleading for mercy. A cold shiver ran down his back as he stared at his deceased sister, part of him believing it was her. His eyes shrunk in fear and hate, knowing this was fake. Nova had died years ago, and the changeling was using her persona to shield herself from him. Part of him wanted to beat her until she dropped Nova's image, but another part stayed his hooves. He had sworn to himself long ago that he would never hurt Nova in any way, living or dead. Paralyzed by the sight of his sister, Comet stood there, unsure of what to do. He ground his teeth, wishing it was just easy enough to shrug off his colthood promise to his dead sister, but he had lost Nova once, and it devastated him. Hurting her, or rather the image of her, would scar him more than ever losing her. Gorgon breathed a sigh of relief as Comet froze in place, allowing her some time to recover. She had only ever seen the image of this pony once, but it had been more important to Comet than Angel. As she looked down and examined her wounds, a hoof shot out and grabbed Gorgon by the neck. The hoof was white, and it stretched back to Comet, who was glaring at her with tears in his eyes. Gorgon shuddered in fear as Comet stared into her eyes, knowing she was probably going to die if he attacked her again. Instead, Comet pulled her close and flapped his wings, rising into the air and smashing through the remnants of a broken window.
Comet, what are you doing?
Shouted Angel as she took off after him. She pursued him, following him to the training compound at the edge of the forest, where he set down the changeling. Angel dropped to the ground behind a bush, but not too far away, and walked out from behind to see what Comet was doing. Comet was staring directly at the curled-up changeling, impersonating some pony. As Comet looked down at the changeling, Nova, he felt a loathing for himself. He should have just finished it by breaking the changeling's neck without looking. He shouldn't have done this, taking her out here. However, the big, tangerine eyes that stared back at him told him everything the changeling was feeling, since they did the whole quivering pupil thing the real Nova's eyes did when she was terrified. He had seen this twice when Nova was alive. Once, when she was scared of a lightning storm. The other, when the doctor told her her disease was advancing rapidly, and if untreated, she would die in 2 weeks. Ironically, she had died 2 months after the second incident due to the medicine she was on for the disease. Grimacing at the sight, fresh tears rolled down Comet's cheeks, but he kept his composure.
Get out of here,
he stated in a quivering but authoritative voice. Get out of here and don't come back. If I see you again, no pony you imitate will ever save you. Nova stared at him, unsure of how to react, but reached a hoof up to touch his cheek. Comet viciously knocked the hoof away, causing the Novaling to flinch. Don't touch me, Comet growled. I know what you are, even if you don't look like it. His eyes, which were a vibrant shade of blue instead of his usual red, locked with the Novaling as she nodded. Picking herself up, she tried to hobble into the forest, but before she could get in, Comet said, Wait. Turning around, Gorgon expected another threat, but instead found Comet press his lips against hers. Gorgon was stunned, but didn't fight back. All sorts of conflicting emotions washed over her like soothing water and fiery lava. She could feel the love he had for this pony pouring out of him, but also the anger that he had over seeing her again. Regret, sorrow, and contentment were also there, whispering into her mind what she was thinking. He knew he would never see her again, but he knew he had to forget her. Deep down, he always wanted to do this before she died, to say goodbye his own way. The kiss broke as quickly as it had happened, and Gorgon stood there in shock. Comet looked over the pony once before looking down and turning around. Goodbye, Nova, he whispered before trotting away from the forest, over to where Angel was. Gorgon wanted to say something, but the words were stuck in her throat. She had enough emotions now to heal and feed herself, so she limped into the forest without another word. As Comet approached Angel, the bat pony stared at him in silence. She had seen everything as Comet stood in the front of her. She smashed a hoof into his face. Comet gritted his teeth at the pain, but didn't say anything or retaliate. Angel did it again, this time to the other side of his face. Again, Comet didn't respond. The bat pony looked down after that, trying to sort out what she was feeling. She was angry with Comet for what had just happened, and rightfully so. They were dating, but at the same time, she didn't want to hurt him anymore. Seeing how he changed when he was being hurt by the changeling, and returning to her after seeing what she assumed was his dead sister again, she knew he cared for her as much, if not more, than that pony. Angel, Comet started. I'm sorry. Sorry for everything that I put you through. Sorry for being the cold and unhappy jackass I have been. Mostly, though, I'm sorry for not being a good stallion to you. Angel perked up, her drooping ears at that, but didn't meet his gaze. Well, it's just you. And Valerie, you both remind me of my sister so much. For a time, I wanted you both. I know it was selfish of me. Being around the two of you made me the happiest I've ever been in years. I'm sure my mother told you that, but she wouldn't have told you this. It hurt me losing Nova. It hurt because I thought I killed her. Deep down, I knew it wasn't true. I was sad because she left and I didn't get to say goodbye. She was everything to me. Then she was gone. No time to say anything, or tell her I would miss her, or to remind her that I loved her one last time. She just fell asleep watching me, and I was too busy for her. Angel was quiet as he spoke. Here he was, after everything that had happened, pouring out everything to her. She didn't want him to explain everything, but she felt it was all making sense now. His parents, everything with Valerie, the first day they met. It was all making sense. Comet, she realized, had stopped talking, and she looked up, meeting his vibrant blue eyes, which she knew were actually red. He stared at her, trying to work out things to say, but found himself unable to speak. Those big golden eyes of that bat pony just looked back into his own, and as they did, he found his voice again. Can you ever forgive me, Angel? Will you forgive me for being so self-centered? Her answer took a while, but a hug told him everything. You've been making me an angel worry about you so much. You come down here and I lost it there. He fell to the floor, writhing in four. She felt incredibly sorrowful as she ran, hearing the words they exchanged in her mind. She shouldn't known. She shouldn't known. Why not? Oh, boo. One of the two claws that were attached to pupils narrow with anger, and fangs bore with sharp. What the hell? Angel landed on a heap on the other side of the room, unmoving except for the nursing. What the hell? It looked like something from that one monster movie. Vlad the Vatpire Pony? That's, yeah. She had two the Vat Pony. I gotta stop saying Fat Pony.
But you have my Greem.
What? When the two of them were finally standing, Angel lied. All the poor princess of the night wouldn't. She was used to threats against herself and her ponies after 1,000 years of dealing with the Streifneft. Feeling a couple of pings from behind, Shining Armor Angel. He mooed. Mood. Instead, Philomena drew upon her own magical stores and shrieked again, unleashing a torrent. Valerie hesitated for a second in fear, and Gorgon let her predecessor take. Angel! He yelled as he struggled. The changeling shot him. Oh, fuck.